Hello again, my dearest algebra friends. Today we are taking what we learned the last couple days. Well, actually, this is just backing it up to the first day. But we are factoring and solving. So we are solving quadratic functions or equations, whatever you want to call them, by factoring. So this is why we did a review of factoring the last couple of days so that you remembered how to do it. And by factoring means we're going to factor first, and then we solve each of the binomials, or we set each of the binomials equal to 0 and solve for x. So set binomials, if there are binomials, most of the time there are, to 0 and solve for x. We'll probably have to solve twice because we have two binomials, right? So let's first review what's called the zero product property, which is like the cornerstone of factoring and solving, which means that if the product of two quantities is 0, then at least one of them has to be 0. So you can't multiply like 6 times 2 and get 0, right? The only way you get 0 is 6 times 0 or 2 times 0. And the same works for binomials, because in order for x minus 7 times x minus 2 to equal 0, we have to figure out either where this one is equal to 0 or this one is equal to 0. And so we actually solve both of them. So what we do, draw a little line under here, separate these two, set each of them equal to 0. So x minus 7 equals 0 or x minus 2 equals 0. And we solve. On this one, we would add 7. Sorry, my dog's going crazy. Hold on. Add 7 to both sides, and we get x equals 7. Here we would subtract 2, and x equals negative 2. All right, now, this next problem, I have x times x plus 6 equals 0. Okay, talk amongst yourselves while I move my dog somewhere else. Okay, I'm back. I hope you had a lovely conversation. So, I'm sorry. Again, I'm doing this on my iPhone, and I don't actually know how to pause it and restart. If somebody has an idea of that and wants to email that to me, that'd be great. But anyway, so on this one, I'm still multiplying two things. I'm multiplying x times x plus 6. So I'm going to set each of these equal to 0 and solve. In this instance, I don't really have to solve because x is already 0. In this one, I would solve for x by subtracting 6 from both sides, and x equals negative 6. Some of you at this point might remember that we did this just by saying like it's the opposite sign of this, right? So if x plus 6 equals 0, I'm going to subtract 6. So I know for sure that's going to be negative 6. So if you can go from here to here, if you remember how to do that, that is fine. 2x minus 1 times 3x plus 4 equals 0. Set 2x minus 1 equal to 0 and 3x plus 4 equals 0. Here, I'm going to add 1 to both sides, and I got 2x equals 1. Divide both sides by 2. I get x equals 1/2. And I would suggest just leaving it like that. If you want to get a decimal for that and put 0.5, you can, but you don't have to. And sometimes it's easier, honestly, if you don't. All right. And then 3x plus 4 equals 0. Subtract 4 from both sides. Get 3x equals negative 4. Divide by 3. Get x equals negative 4/3. All right, so that's a zero product property. So this zero product property is the last step in solving quadratics by factoring. So first, what you're going to do in factoring and solving, well, obviously, we have to make sure our equation has 0 on one side. You always have to do that. And then you factor, and then you solve. So what we just did using zero product property up there, that's our last step. So x squared plus 6x plus 8 equals 0. And again, when you see that it says equals 0, that's the difference. Like if this was x squared plus 6x plus 8 and nothing else, it would just want you to factor it. If it says x squared plus 6x plus 8 equals 0, it wants you to factor and solve. Or, I mean, I shouldn't say always factor and solve, but if you have equals 0, that means solve it, okay? All right, so I have x squared plus 6x plus 8 equals 0. So the first thing I have to do is find two numbers that multiply to 8 and add to 6. So I'm going to go with, well, I could do 8 and 1, or I could do 4 and 2. 8 plus 1 would give me 9, so that's not going to work. 4 plus 2 give me 6, so that's good. So remember, I just go, because this is 8 equals 1, so I don't have to do anything else. So this is x plus 4 times x plus 2 equals 0. And then I just do what I did up here. So I kind of do my little t here. And I set each to 0. So I have x plus 4 equals 0, and x plus 2 equals 0, and x equals then -4, and x equals -2. So those are my two answers. Sorry, you couldn't see that part. All right, x squared plus, or excuse me, minus 7x plus 12. Excuse me. Had to cough there for a second. So multiply to 12, add to -7. Remember, if this is negative, if your B is negative and C is positive, both are going to be negative, okay? So what multiplies to 12 and adds to 7, that would be negative, or -7, -3, and -4. So x minus 3 equals 0, x minus 4 equals 0. Add 3 to both sides, you get x equals 3. Add 4 to both sides, you get x equals 4. So those are my two answers. Last one, multiply to -12, add to 4. So if C is negative and B is positive, that means one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. Since my middle number is positive, that means my larger factor, remember, is going to be positive here. So whatever the bigger number is when you multiply them together, the bigger one's going to be positive. So multiplying to 12, you have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Larger factors positive, so -1 here, -2, -3. -1 plus 12 is 11. -2 plus 6, that's 4. So my plus is 6, my minus is 2. And then I solve. X plus 6 equals 0. And x minus 2 equals 0. Subtract 6 from both sides. X equals -6. Add 2 to both sides here. X equals 2. And again, remember, you can just go straight to here. You don't have to write out that x plus 6 equals 0 and x minus 2 equals 0 if you understand the concept of it's just going to be the opposite number there. Okay? All right, so those are your notes for today. Your optional assignment is just a whole bunch of these. So again, solving by factoring. If you look at number 1, x squared plus 16x plus 63 equals 0. Again, this equals 0 tells you to solve it. So what multiplies to 63 and adds to 16? We are going to look at, well, 9 and 7, right? There's a whole bunch of ways to multiply 63, but that's the one I can think of. So we have, right over here, sorry. X plus 9 times x plus 7 equals 0. And then you have x plus 9 equals 0, x plus 7 equals 0. So x equals -9, x equals, I almost wrote that again, -7. So your answers, x equals -9, x equals -7. So there's 6 more on here. Do them if you feel like you have to. If you don't, then that's good. Alrighty, so that is it for today. Hope you have a great day.